I need to wash my car. Yes, I do. Boop doop boo. Hi y'all, we are gathered here today to discuss the book The Hatak Witches by Devin Mihisua. The Hatak Witches. I really enjoyed it. There's one section where I was just kind of like, but I do want to kind of just a little bit compare this to the Anne Hillerman book I read earlier in the year. The Anne Hillerman book I DNF'd earlier in the year. The Anne Hillerman book called Cave of Bones. 2 reasons. I want to compare them because Devin Mihisua's The Hatak Witches is about predominantly the Choctaw Nation, based specifically out of Oklahoma. And Anne Hillerman's book, Cave of Bones, was based out of the Four Corners region and dealt with, I don't remember what tribe she was dealing with. I'll put it on the screen here because off the top of the noggin, I can't recall. Not only do they both revolve around Native people and Native lands, but they also revolve around detective work. They both feature detectives solving crimes. I want to compare them in the sense that I think Devin did a phenomenal job at incorporating the history of the Choctaw tribe and the surrounding tribes of the region, where it felt a part of the storyline. It felt easily integrated. You were just getting these nuggets of knowledge. Cave of Bones felt more like you were reading a historical textbook. Apologies for the interruption. I'm sure whatever I'm currently talking about is absolutely enthralling, but I have a really big request for y'all and I need your help. I'm currently working on a project that requires some comments, not to be like asking for comments and engagement, but the project needs all the booktubers. I need them all, every single one of them. Your favorite booktubers, drop them in the comments down below. I need to expand my knowledge about who's yapping about books on the ether webs. Tag them. I need them. We gotta catch them all. And let's see what else Kayla has to say. Like, you were just kind of getting information told to you, and the Hatak Witches wove it in so effortlessly, so seamlessly. You were like learning all these interesting facts and important facts, and yet you weren't being inundated with just a wall of text. I'm done comparing the two. I just want to say, like, where I really didn't like Cave of Bones, because that was one of my biggest complaints, is it felt like I was just reading a textbook. So done comparing the two. I just needed to bring it up because I had literally read Cave of Bones earlier, or started to read Cave of Bones earlier this year, and I was just blown away at like what I had read and what like doing it right looks like. The Hatak Witches did it right. And oh my god, I loved it so much. Let's just get into it. There's just some things happening in here. I would note, if you need trigger warnings, to look them up and protect yourself accordingly. I will tell y'all if a book ever just like pushes me over the edge, but I find that we all have our own lived experiences that dictate what does or doesn't trigger us. And sometimes I find that a lot of things other people might find triggering, might find unsettling, I'm just like unfazed by. If anything is horribly egregious though, I will definitely let you guys know. I personally did not find anything horribly egregious in this book, but that is my experience with the book. So again, if you need trigger warnings, please look them up accordingly. With that noted, the Hatak Witches. So it starts out with us learning about the lands of Oklahoma and like the owner of the lands kind of going into a little bit of the history about how obviously the lands were taken by colonization and then given back to the natives. And unfortunately, I didn't know this, and I don't know if this is factual, but I'm going to take it as semi-factual, is that apparently a lot of natives that were given land would then just sell the land back to get the money, which is just so sad and unfortunate because like we live in a capitalistic society. So it's unfortunate that they felt that they needed the money more than they needed the land, which it's just kind of really sad. It's talking about the owner of this land. I believe his name is Leroy, is the owner of this specific land that we're spending a lot of time of the book discussing. He is very protective of his lands. There's a father and a son who are going deer hunting on his land, specifically bow deer hunting. And they got the right of way. They're good to go. Everything's kosher. And they spend all day not seeing anything. And towards the end of the day, they see a buck. Little boy, he's like so hyped he can finally use the bow that his grandpa got him a while ago. And he shoots the buck. They get it. But the buck like kind of wanders off to try and find like a safe space, obviously, like most animals do, to pass away. They leave their hunting stand and go trying to find the buck. But as they're trying to find the buck, you know, the sun's starting to set, starting to get lower. The father is like, I know I'm not supposed to be out here during like this, like after dark. Once it hits dark, game over. Apparently things go down south real fast when the sun sets in this area. They finally find the buck, but the buck is mutilated. And the way it's mutilated, they would have heard something like the antlers were sawed off. It was a sight to be seen. This is our first experience with any sort of gore in this book. So if you have a easily disturbed stomach, I might avoid this book or just skip over the very descriptive sequence of events. So very disturbing looking buck. And the boy's just like, Dad? And the dad's like, let's get the F out of here. And they start to hear the animals crying. And they're like, oh no, really getting a little loud, really getting a little rambunctious. So they start to like leave the forest. And then all of a sudden they're being attacked by owls. And so they start sprinting on out of there. They get to their car. I think it said after like a 10-minute run. They get to their car, they get in the car, something like lands on top of the car, starts like beating at it. It's craziness. It was very, very suspenseful sequence of events. The chapter ends with them getting on the road and like escaping this attack. We are now introduced to Detective Monique Bluehawk. She's just kind of doing her morning routine, getting ready, brushing her teeth, taking her dog for a run, living her life, kind of giving us a little backstory on Monique and her husband and her son, how they had moved out to the Pacific Northwest for Monique to start her police career. But then Monique was offered a job in Oklahoma to become a detective. And they're originally from Oklahoma. So they were like, yes, let's get out of this miserable, cold, rainy region. Let's go down back to our roots. We get a little backstory on them and Monique and the type of person she is. She is very in tune with her native heritage, her native culture. And then she is getting ready for her day and just gets a call from her boss being like, hey, there is something going on at the Science Museum. You guys got to get down there. Monique gets to the Science Museum where she meets up with her partner, Chris, who is a white man. It's interesting, the dynamic, because it feels like Monique, she's the woman in charge, but her partner, at least initially, feels like he is like a rookie. He's very new to the job. I can't remember if he is or is not, but it's interesting to see like the initial interaction with him and like the growth of him as a character throughout the story. They get to the Science Museum. It's before opening hours. It's super early in the morning. And they are led there by the security guard who was like just taking over the shift. Like he was the morning guy. He was coming to relieve the evening guys. The evening guys, one of them is in, I'm assuming, the security room. I can't quite remember like all the locations because there's so many locations just even within the Science Museum itself. So they get there. This guy looks beat the F up. Like looked like someone was potentially maybe trying to scalp him. He had like multiple stab wounds. I can't remember if he had something on his, like if someone tried slashing his neck or not. It's just not cute. Not a good time for him for sure, but he is still alive. Obviously, like they try and ask him a few questions because he's a little coherent to what's going on. But not really. They don't try and push it. Obviously, he's like laying there potentially dying out, bleeding out for sure. But by the time Monique and Chris get there, it's like EMS is already there, fire department's already there, like things are being handled at least for the specific person who is unfortunately in a bad shape. And as the EMS crew is taking him out, they pass a door, and the guy on the stretcher starts freaking out, and he starts screaming this other guy's name, saying he's in there, he's in there, he's in there. And so more and more staff start showing up, and one of them has like set of keys to get into that specific room. It's called the, let me see if I can find what it was called or referred to as. I can't remember what it's called. It's like the room of the unknown or something like that. Because like no one goes in there. So the professor, whomever, opens the door to it, and they discover the other security guard's body, and it's intense what they discover in there. This room is full of shelving, like lots of shelving, so much shelving. And there's like boxes stacked 5 high and 5 deep on all the shelves. So this place is packed full of skeletal remains. And we find our security guard just not in good shape. Let's just say this guy had like long, lovely hair and a nice thick handlebar mustache. And when they find him, neither of those things are there anymore. It was an instance of like extreme scalping. And Monique is kind of like trying to theorize who did this, what did this. And she kind of like in her mind is going off on like it was probably natives trying to like, she initially thinks natives, and then she like kind of feels bad for being that her first instinct. And my initial thought on this instance was like, I bet it's like not natives, it's just someone trying to like, create a red herring, distract you, point you in the wrong direction. So it was interesting that initially when I saw or read that there was a scalping instance going on, my initial reaction was like red herring. They're trying to like point you in the wrong direction. I appreciated that the author decided to have Monique think natives initially, but then like kind of backpedal on it and feel a certain kind of way internally about like that being her first knee-jerk reaction, especially as a Choctaw woman. One of the big key factors is that this room only has one entrance. There isn't like an exit out of it. There's no underground tunnels. The only thing is like a vent system above, but like no human being could fit through that vent system. And we just go through the entire detective process of trying to figure out what the heck happened here. The one part I don't want to like tell you guys too much about this book because I really think you just need to go out there and read it on your own. And the parts that I just told you were like literally maybe this much of the book. So I just really want you to get it. I want you to read it. If you like detective, if you like mystery, if you like a little bit of gore and horror, I think you'll like this book. The one part where it kind of lost me is, let me insert a theory I had about this book right now.
But this morning, I was just sitting there kind of thinking, processing what I've consumed so far of the book. I have a hunch we're gonna get like a Scooby-Doo moment. Detective Bluehawk just met with some people who are potential suspects or just like people they have to like, weed out. That's not the word, but that's the word I'm using. The conversation they had pretty much alluded to like this is something spiritual and mystical that's occurring, and it's not necessarily an act of man. I have a hunch that at the end we're gonna find that it is literally an act of man. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see where it goes. But yeah, part of me is like, ooh, this is gonna be a Scooby-Doo moment where we've kind of been led up to this point of like, ooh, what is this crazy paranormal spiritual situation that's gonna occur? And part of me is just like, Scooby-Doo? Scooby-Doo. So we'll see. I don't know. We'll see.
I was wrong in that assessment. I've just had some big misses when it comes to books that deal with paranormal instances. And let's just say that this book does delve into that. I will note Here's the thing though, it makes sense that this book does that. I think it did it all right. There were some parts of it where I was just kind of like rolling my eyes super far back into my head, but then there were other parts where I'm like, okay, but this makes sense. So a part of me is like, ooh, this feels a little too fantastical, but then another part of me was like, but it makes sense in this context. So ultimately, I was all right with it, but like my initial knee-jerk reaction was just like, oh, ghosts. The Hatak Witches, I would give it like 4 stars, like a high 4-star. I still need to find a book where I just am obsessed with it that has paranormal developments or spiritual developments in it, because so far every book I've read, I just kind of like roll my eyes so far back in my head. And for me, there's something even more disturbing and terrifying and scary when the big bad wolf is a human. I was taking the girls out for their morning activities this morning, and I was trying to think through my process of this element of the Hatak witches, and I just came to the conclusion that the reason I never find it scary, at least in reading format, my brain can't like my brain doesn't make the suspense that, like, let's say if this was a movie and these elements were incorporated, I feel like a movie gives you that visual suspense. It has the music to it. It like gives you the full package experience. So it's just telling you how to feel. Whereas with the book, it's dependent on the reader to interpret how they feel. And for me, when reading about paranormal, spooky stuff, it just very rarely ever just hits me in the right spot. Whereas finding out that there were like this deranged group of people who were scalping innocent humans, that feels more terrifying to me. Please, please, please add this to your collection. I would also recommend the audiobook. I thought the narrator did a pretty bang out job. Go read it. That's all I gotta say. I hope you guys enjoyed this installment of Booktober. We are going strong. I'm really enjoying not only reading all these books, but like telling you guys about all these books. I really hope that you are enjoying this series. Am I delusional for trying to get 31 videos out in 31 days? Maybe. Just a scotch, but it has been a good time nonetheless. Anyways, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications, and let me know in the comments down below, have you read the Hatak Witches? And if not, have I swayed you to read the Hatak Witches? I will see y'all in the next one.